contributions. That is why I've said we will end affirmative action and racial quotas in every area of American life. It's been a cancer on our national soul, and we are done with it. It means we believe in the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. That is why I've said we will use our own military to secure our own southern border and our northern border too. That's what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. It means that we the people create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. That the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government. Not the shadow government in those three-letter agencies that run the show today. So you know what, if I can't work for you for more than 8 years as your next president, which I think is a good thing, then neither should any of those federal bureaucrats either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of civil service protections. And I love I get the music for the good part too. That's good. I like that. Should have sent those bureaucrats home. 75% reduction in the number of federal bureaucrats by the end of my first term. Shutting down government agencies that should not exist. Starting with zero-based budgeting. Don't start with last year's budget as the baseline, because that's broken. It's based on the prior years. Start with zero as the baseline. And ask what's actually necessary. That's going to take a CEO in the White House. That's going to take somebody coming in from the outside who can't be captured by the special interests that stuff that budget. I'll tell you, I've learned a lot this year in my short-lived period in politics. I'm a businessman, not a politician, and I will tell you that every politician dances to the tune of their biggest donor. In my case, that biggest donor is me. That's why I'm able to speak the hard truths. And I'll tell you that it's going to take somebody coming from the outside, but I think somebody from the next generation to tackle these basic issues. Elections that we can win, that we can trust, that we can believe in. Single-day voting on Election Day as a national holiday with paper ballots and government-issued voter ID to match the voter file. And yes, English as the sole language that appears on a ballot. That shouldn't be controversial. That's common sense. These aren't black ideas or white ideas. These aren't even Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. Not really, they shouldn't be. They are fundamentally American ideals that we fought a revolution to secure in this country. And I believe deep in my heart that those ideals still exist. I'm running for president to revive them. It's on the bottom of every one of our coins for a reason. E pluribus unum, which means from many, one. That's what we've lost in this country. We've celebrated our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we're really just the same as Americans. Here's how we're going to get it back. It's going to be what I said at the very beginning. It's going to be by all of us starting to speak in the open again. Say in public what you will say in private at the dinner table. Say it with a spine. Say it with conviction. Say it with respect. But part of respect is that you respect your neighbor enough to tell him what you actually think. That is what this campaign is about. Speaking the truth, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. Speaking the truth, not just to the Democrats on the other side, but speaking the hard truth to our own Republican Party, right here at home as well. There's a reason why I'm the only candidate in this race who can take a clear position on the use of eminent domain to say it's wrong for building this toxic carbon capture pipeline, bending the knee to a climate change agenda that, yes, I will tell you the truth, it is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. That Ronna McDaniel, the failed chairman of the RNC, needs to step down and resign after 5 failed years of leadership. That I'll pardon the peaceful protesters from January 6th because that's the right thing to do in this country, even if it doesn't match the media or the RNC narrative. That's what it's going to take. The things I'm saying, they're controversial not because they are false, but because they're true. That God is real. that there are two genders, that fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity, that reverse racism is racism, that an open border is not a border, that parents determine the education of their children, that the nuclear family is still the greatest form of governance known to mankind, that capitalism, not crony capitalism, but actual capitalism, is still the best known system to lift us up from poverty, that there are 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4, and that the U.S. Constitution is the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We fight for the truth. We stand up for the truth. That is what won us the American Revolution. That's what's going to win us the revolution in 2024. Thank you for coming out today, guys. God bless you and your families. God bless our country. I want to open this up. I think we have time for a couple of questions before we make our way to our final stop. But go to the back if you guys have any questions. And say if not, you got one there, sir? I was going to propose one otherwise.
What are you going to do?
What's that?
What are you going to do about Iran and Hamas and
Yes.
everything's going over there?
So here's the answer. Okay, we're closer to World War III than we've ever been in my lifetime. The top threat we face is actually the Russia-China alliance. Two countries are in a military alliance with one another. I think we're actually making policy decisions that are pushing them closer together. So I'll give you my foreign policy in a nutshell. End the war in Ukraine. I don't think it's advancing our interests. Do it on reasonable terms that require Russia to exit its military alliance with China. As it relates to Israel, stand absolutely for Israel's right to national self-defense. Israel has the right to defend itself, and now the U.S. or the UN or the EU should not be getting in their way. Let Israel get that job done. They can do it. They don't need our troops on the ground, and we don't need to put our troops on the ground. That's what it needs to be. So we should not be getting ourselves into making the same mistakes that we did in Iraq and Afghanistan 20 years ago. But my foreign policy is actually far clearer than that. Avoid World War III. Declare economic independence from communist China. And then here's a radical idea. Use our own military resources and our own national defense spending to defend our own homeland right here in the United States of America. If that can happen on October 7th in Israel, you mark my words. Hopefully I will not be proven right on this. And if we get into office, I'll be able to prevent this. That could happen right here in the United States of America. We're more vulnerable than we ever have been. Our borders are wide open. Cyber attacks, super EMP attacks on our electric grid, missile attacks, space-based attacks. We're more vulnerable than we've ever been. And so I do think it's going to take somebody outside of yesterday's broken foreign policy establishment to actually stand for the interests of our own country. And just as a father, I can tell you, I'm dad of 2 sons. As a father, my moral obligation is to my family. As your next president, my sole moral duty is to you, the citizens of this country, not any other one. And that's how I'm going to lead in a way that we have left our country far more vulnerable than we've ever been in the last half century. That's going to change on my watch. Great question. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Go to the very back there.
So if you're going to use the military to defend our border, what are you going to do about the cartel involvement of the human trafficking and the drugs that are coming up even to Iowa?
Well, they're terrorist organizations. I mean, that's what we got to acknowledge. You got synthetic materials coming from lab in Wuhan, ending up in the hands of Mexican drug cartels that they're using to lace into other pharmaceuticals. I met 2 parents in this state. Derek and Kathy were their names. Their son Sebastian was 17 years old. When he took a Percocet that was laced with fentanyl, he didn't know that. He died as a result. He's no longer with us. That's not an overdose. That's poisoning. That's more like bioterrorism. So we have to designate the cartels as terrorist organizations and take the fullest steps under the law to be able to prevent them. Now, I don't think it's going to have to get to the point where we go to Mexico to get that job done. I think using our military to seal our own southern border and then playing hardball with the next Mexican president, there's a new president of Mexico in 2024, is actually going to be enough to seal this deal, help them regain their sovereignty. But if necessary, we will go to the fullest extent of whatever is required to protect ourselves in this country. That's my job as your commander-in-chief. That's what it means to defend our own homeland. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that question. You know, let me just... Hey, you got a question right here?
Just two quick ones. Gun rights and big pharma.
Well, two important topics. Let's talk about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is the one amendment that protects all of the others. Iran and China, they claim to offer the same freedoms we do, actually, believe it or not. Except they don't have a Second Amendment. Black Americans did not enjoy their civil rights, even after the Civil War, until their Second Amendment rights were secured. So this is the one freedom that protects all of the other ones. That's what history teaches us, and that's why I stand for not for sport shooting or hunting. That's not what this is for. This is for the teeth in the rest of our Constitution. Now, talking about Big Pharma, this is the largest lobbying organization in human history. And actually, one of my businesses, my first business was a biotech company challenging Big Pharma and a lot of their coordinated behaviors. And I developed 5 FDA-approved medicines that are FDA-approved today. The cost of doing that is far higher than it needs to be because Big Pharma lobbies for that, because it keeps the competition out. Think about the immunity. You can't sue a vaccine manufacturer for product liability, even though you can sue any other kind of company for product liability. Why? Crony capitalism from Big Pharma. So that starts with the reform of the FDA. Start with medical choice. You have the right to try something even if the FDA hasn't approved it. That's what it should be. You know who's lobbied in that case? It's Big Pharma. You know what else Big Pharma's lobbied for? This is a big one. You may not think of the connection, but it's important. The rise of violent crime in this country. Why? It's the product of a mental health epidemic. It's a mental health epidemic. And part of that is pharma lobbied for closing psychiatric institutions when they developed antipsychotics, which are some of their best-selling drugs, to get people out. Well, we closed those psychiatric institutions over the same period that we've seen a rise of violent crime in this country. Bring back those psychiatric institutions. We'd be able to do that if it weren't for the product of Big Pharma lobbying. So you asked two fundamental and pretty important questions, so thank you for that, sir. And before we wrap, one of the questions that sometimes comes up, and I just wanted to see if you all were, if it was of interest, to you all, to hear about my faith. Is that important to you all? I'll tell you a word about that because my faith is actually what leads me to this journey, actually. I'm Hindu. It's a little different than the traditional faith of people who have run for U.S. president in the past, but I have been through Christian schools. I went to St. Xavier in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm still on the board of St. X, actually. And I can tell you with conviction that we share the same value set in common. My faith teaches me, and my parents instilled this in me, I'm grateful to them for it, that God puts each of us here for a purpose. That we have a moral duty to realize that purpose. That He works through us in different ways, but that we're all equal. Because God resides in each of us. That's what my faith teaches me. So when I read the 10 Commandments for the first time, there's one true God. Don't take His name in vain. Observe the Sabbath. Respect your parents. Don't kill. Don't lie. Don't cheat. Don't covet. Don't commit adultery. It felt like it was my parents teaching me the same traditional values they instilled in me. Those seem like foreign values today in our country. Go to your local DEI training session at a mega corporation. Turn on movies. Look at what they're teaching in our schools. Those can feel like foreign values, but they're not foreign to most of us. And I think one of the core teachings of my faith is we don't choose who God works through. God chooses who God works through. The book of Isaiah. Who did God choose? God chose Cyrus all the way in Persia, a Gentile, to lead the Jews back to the promised land. My faith is what guides me to this because I think it's going to take a unique combination right now in our country. Each of us has our own unique God-given gifts. The question is, how do we use them to do good in the time we're given? I'll tell you, I think right now we're going to need in the presidency an outsider. Someone coming in willing to break glass with sharp elbows. And I don't know if you all have been watching the debates, but when necessary, I will bring that. And we're going to bring that to Washington, D.C. But we also need a president who, let's not be honest, Trump brings that too. But we also need a president who understands the law and the Constitution in this country. And those two things don't usually go together, actually. You might have the academic law professor types over here. You might have the sharp elbow business guys over here. I think that's what this country requires right now. I didn't covet running for president. I still don't. On certain days, I definitely don't. But it's not about me. The America First agenda does not belong to one man. It doesn't belong to Trump. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you, the people of this country. And I think right now, more than ever, it's going to take somebody with fresh legs. Somebody from the next generation to lead the new generation of Americans. If the existing political class or the existing generation were going to get this done, we wouldn't be where we are. There's a reason why Thomas Jefferson was 33 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. These revolutions, these revivals tend to be led. Take somebody whose best days in life are still yet ahead to see a country whose best days can still be ahead of it too. We're taught to believe that we're at the end of the ancient Roman Empire. That all we have left is to fight over the scraps of a shrinking pie in this country. I don't think we have to be wrong. I don't think we have to be that nation in decline. I think the truth is, as a nation right now, really just a little young, actually. Going through our own version of adolescence. Figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. And when you view it that way, it makes sense again, actually. To me, it does. You go through your adolescence, you go through that identity crisis. You lose your way. You do some stupid things. Most of us probably. I did. But we are stronger for it when we get to adulthood on the other side. So no, I don't think we have to be that nation in decline. This might be the last time I'm able to say this. I'm not sure I could tell you this in 2028, but I can tell you this now. I think we still can be a nation in our ascent. Maybe even the early stages of our ascent. Maybe we're not even at base camp. On our way still to that shining city on a hill. That country where we will look our kids in the eye and mean it when we tell them that the United States of America is the nation where no matter who you are, or where your parents came from, or what your skin color is, or how long your last name is, in some of our cases, my kid's case, that you will get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication. And you know what? You are free to speak your minds at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. I'm here to ask for your help. There. The system isn't made for a guy like me to do this. Coming in from the outside, from the next generation, not playing the donor class game. It's not supposed to work this way. But it can work this way because Iowa goes first. I don't report to them, I report to you, the people of this country. If you want to volunteer with us, be a precinct captain. At least show up on January 15th. Take 30 minutes of your time to save this country. You mark my words, I think we're going to deliver a shock in the Iowa caucus. Many of our supporters have not participated in a caucus. They are not polled. We're going to deliver a shock on January 15th. And with your help, a general election landslide that I owe you if you make me your nominee. So if you all do your part, it's not going to be one person, it's not a one-person job, but if you all do your part, I promise you that my wife Apurva and I and our family, we're going to do ours. To make sure, not in some cheesy politician kind of way, but just in a true way, to make sure that our country's best days are actually still ahead of us. Thank you for coming. God bless you. I like you taking notes. Oh, you look ready. That's why. Thank you for coming.